This is your go-to source for all things real estate in Northeast Georgia. Join me here as I dive into local businesses, explore real estate trends, break down economic forecasts, all while keeping you in the loop with everything related to the housing and commercial real estate markets. No matter if you're a buyer, seller, investor, or just plain curious about the region's property landscape, I got you covered. So tune in for insightful discussions, expert interviews, valuable insights, and stay informed while making smart real estate decisions and connecting with the pulse of the Northeast Georgia commercial and residential property market.
What is up, everybody? Jake Blickenstaff here with the Northeast Georgia Real Estate Podcast. Man, I'm fired up today. So I've got a special guest for you guys, which I am extremely excited about having on this podcast today. It's Mr. Jason Bright. He's with BRIGHTSMITH Advisors. And I'm not even going to go into kind of his background. I'm going to let him do that so that way I don't murder it. But we happen to know each other from another career path, another life. And I'm sure that we're going to talk about that. But he's an extreme wealth of knowledge and investment advisor. So if you have anything to do with the real estate aspect or investments or anything like that, you definitely want to tune in all the way through this because Jason's going to give some major value for you guys. But without any further ado, Jason, man, how you been?
Good, man. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on, Jake.
Absolutely. Glad we were finally able to connect. I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, we try to stay busy. Yeah, we try to stay busy.
Hey, those are good problems to have.
That's right.
So let's jump right into it, man. Why don't we? Obviously, I know about you. Go ahead and tell kind of everybody that's watching, like who you are, what you do, and kind of how you fell into what you're currently doing.
Yeah. So I have my own advisory company that I started almost a year ago now, called BRIGHTSMITH Advisors, and have been kind of in the financial advisory space for the last 5 years. Started out in a captive, broker dealer type situation, and realized pretty quickly that the kind of advice I like to give, just I needed to start my own firm in order to be able to do the kind of things I want to do. Prior to being an advisor, my background is actually as a mechanical engineer. That's kind of the past life that you and I had, Jake, traipsing around power plants. But yeah, I did a lot of designing complex systems, package systems for people to help solve really difficult problems, not just focusing on selling individual products, but really solving complex problems in the mining and oil and gas, power, process space for about 12 years. And so kind of bring a lot of that mentality to my work as an advisor. So my current business, BRIGHTSMITH Advisors, is really focused on providing proactive and holistic advice, primarily to business owners and higher net worth individuals in the 5 core areas of business advisory, wealth management, risk mitigation, advanced tax planning, and usually some type of legal services. So I run what I call a virtual family office practice. So I've got a network of some of the nation's top advisors around the country that have partnered with me to bring this kind of high level of coordinated advice to the type of clients that we work with.
Right on, man. Yeah, definitely. You touched kind of on being in the power industry. I did that for a lot of folks, and as well, for about 15 years. So we were kind of right side by side with that. But one of the things that really turned me on to like what it is that you do now, especially coming from our past, is that you've basically explained having an engineer or a technician aspect of financial advice. And that just blew me away because not a lot of financial advisors or investment advisors have that same outlook. It's more just like kind of theory, logic based up top instead of saying, here, let's reverse engineer what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And let me show you an actual path that we can get to that point. Would you agree with kind of that summation?
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. I mean, the financial services industry is kind of an interesting place. Coming up through the path that I came through, which is how a lot of people come into the industry through an insurance company or through some type of captive agency. You're really recruited and trained as a salesperson. And that's, I think, the bad rap that a lot of advisors get is that they're just out here trying to sell stuff, sell insurance, sell this or whatever. And kind of like you said, my approach has always been to be a problem solver, right? Clients have a set of needs They have a set of resources, right? We have resources on this side. We have kind of what their desired outcomes are on this side. And, how can we utilize all the tools that we have in our toolbox to be able to help maximize the probability that that client can turn those resources into their desired outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I say something similar to my team on a regular basis, talking about don't be transactional, be more relational. So it's
Yeah.
not just, you're not just trying to get a sale and help somebody transact in real estate. You're really trying to help solve all of their problems. Like you said, with, not only can I help you potentially buy or sell a house, but if you have a business, I can help you relocate your business and do a commercial lease or something to that effect. So there's really, you got to peel back those layers of the onion, if you will, to find out what the problems are that actually exist and what they're trying to accomplish. So how long have you been, like, you're in the Lawrenceville area, so do you just practice in that area? Are you able to help people nationwide, or what does your reach look like?
Yeah, I work nationwide. I've got, a client I'm helping sell a dental practice in Colorado. I've got clients in Florida, Texas, all over the Southeast. So yeah, so I can work with really anybody anywhere in the country. As much as things are open back up and people meet in person and all that stuff now. I mean, still, even to this day, probably 90% of my meetings are virtual, just because it's convenient for people, they enjoy it, and it works for me too. It makes my practice more efficient. But yeah, I work with anybody all over the country.
Awesome. Well, I know that let's dive a little bit deeper into some of the services that you offer. I know that when we had originally spoke, many months ago, that one of the things that really stood out to me, especially being a commercial and residential broker, for a lot of the clients that I have in the investment space, whenever they do go to disposition of property and they're looking at potentially trying to find a new investment to do a 1031 exchange and roll some of those profits and proceeds into, especially in a crazy tight market right now where there's just not a lot of inventory. Some of the solutions that you brought up, I want to highlight today. Can you dive in a little bit more into that?
Yeah, totally. As we know, the 1031 rules can be kind of complicated for folks who maybe don't understand it or not familiar, with the rules. And one of the things that I think a lot of people, the reason why they're maybe scared to do a 1031 or maybe they're hesitant about a 1031 is the time requirements, right? I've got 45 days to identify a new property. I've got 180 days to close on that new property, but I've also got to coordinate that with the sale and the closing of my property. And how can I be assured that, when I find a buyer, that I can find the right property in the right amount of time, and that I can actually execute those transactions, in that time frame. And when you're in a tight market, like we're in right now, especially on the commercial side, with cap rates expanding and things like that, it can be really difficult, to find that next property, or even to liquidate the property that you're in. And as well as I do, when it comes to real estate investing, we always want to sell in one market and we want to buy in a different one, right? And so, yeah. And so, unless you're talking about, trying to sell, maybe in Atlanta the market's hot for sellers, and then Austin it's good for buyers. We're looking at kind of trying to stretch ourselves geographically when it comes to our buying and selling. A lot of times that's the problem is, you're selling a property at the peak of its value, but if you're trying to 1031 into another local property, that's kind of move-in ready, so to speak, or that doesn't require a lot of sweat equity to really get in it, you're paying top dollar for that property. And so, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that the rules of what constitutes a like kind property are a lot more flexible than I think a lot of people realize. And so one of the things that people can do is that they can actually 1031 into institutional baskets of real estate. And so we have vehicles like DSTs, that are baskets of commercial real estate, baskets of commercial strip malls, where you can actually 1031 into a institutionally managed fund that holds 8, 10, 15 different strip malls in 10 different states. And so what these often can be, and that's just kind of example. I mean, anything from out parcel retail to anchor store retail to industrial facilities to standalone retail to fast food chains to you name it, you can think of it in the 1031 institutional space. It's available, and the beauty is that inventory is almost always there. right? So identifying and closing on the transaction is usually like just a matter of like selecting from a menu. It can be really that easy. And it's a great way, for investors who want to, get rid of a property, who want to maybe park their cash, still continue to defer the taxes through the 1031 exchange rules, and hang tight and wait for a time period while they go figure out, hey, what is my next ideal property? So a lot of times when we're working with an investor on trying to place that 1031, we're kind of wanting to know, hey, how long are you willing to let the money sit? Because a lot of times these institutional type investments, they are like any other real estate deal, they're illiquid. But how long are you want to sit? What kind of return profile are you trying to achieve while the money is sitting? And what type of asset classes are you interested in being in? And then we can, usually use that to match the client to a fund that will help them accomplish the goals that they're after.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Are you still able to get the tax advantages of that if you do a 1031 into one of those funds like you do of actual?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Yeah, you're
Okay.
continuing to defer the tax, and the beauty is, even with kind of the one of the things that people run into sometimes is the debt ratio issue with the 1031, right? If I've got a property that I'm selling where I've got 50% debt, on it, and I've got to make sure I keep the same debt ratio in the next property, at least the same amount of debt in the next property. We can even kind of finely tune that. A lot of these funds are leveraged funds, so the client can go in and they can have that debt inside the fund that qualifies as that to maintain that debt ratio inside the fund. So even there, it's pretty, we can maintain that without the client have to put in extra capital to reach that debt threshold or that debt ratio that they had on the previous property. So it's a really great solution. Yeah, you get the same. It's from a tax perspective, it's no different than 1031ing into another property that you would own directly. You're just directly holding a share of an institutionalized basket of real estate properties.
Very cool. I know that when you brought that up, that was like a massive light bulb moment for me because I've had multiple conversations over the last couple of months with other major investors where they're just like, I want to sell, but I don't have anything else that I want to buy right now, so I'm not going to pay the taxes on it. Makes sense. And so they just for the process instead of deferring their taxes, which is what they really want to do.
Right.
So I know that I'm going to probably get asked this, or if anybody that's kind of a savvy investor, they might be interested in wondering what's the difference between one of the basket of investments that you have and maybe like a REIT, which other people are familiar with.
Yeah, it's very similar. The difference is you can't 1031 into a REIT. You can do what's called I think it's a 721 exchange up REIT, from a DST, but generally speaking, you can't 1031 into a REIT. Is my understanding, and I could be wrong about that. I'm sure somebody will probably call me out if I am, but the other side of it is
stay in the comments section.
yeah. But yeah. So again, the big difference is there's a lot of publicly traded REITs that are out there. There's a lot of people that can access those REITs or publicly on the stock market. They're traded widely. These we're talking about. These are private placements. These are private investments that are put together by large institutions or even by groups of developers in that case. So that's the big difference is that in the alternative space, kind of outside of REITs, there's a lot more diversity of options, and you can get a lot more granular. Some REITs, maybe multifamily, whereas in the 1031 space in the alternatives, you can actually 1031 into a single apartment complex as with a pool of investors into a single apartment complex if you want. So there's lots of, again, there's a lot more diversity out there in the alternative space for 1031s. I mean, self-storage, land development, industrial, you name it, you can do it. Yeah.
So, I mean, outside of the 1031 part of all of the services and stuff that you look for that you're capable of providing to clients, what are some of the other main aspects of your business or your vertical, if you will, that you would potentially want to touch on to kind of highlight?
Yeah, I mean, our business is all about helping, I like to say helping business owners solve their biggest problems and help them achieve their biggest goals. I mean, our whole view, with the way we do business is that, we're all called to be stewards of, kind of what God's given us, right? And we want to help people be good stewards of that. In a lot of ways, it's about really maximizing efficiency of capital, right? People have, assets they've accumulated, they have wealth they've accumulated, they have a business that they've built. But how can we come in and help make this run more efficiently? A lot of clients end up coming to us, out the gate, really with a focus on tax planning. They're feeling some pain around their tax bill. And, we're not CPAs, we're not tax advisors, but we do know a lot about the tax code. We do have a lot of access to a lot of really interesting tax mitigation strategies. And so generally, our first contact with a client is typically meeting their CPA, building a relationship with their tax professional so that we can begin working together to expose their tax professional to some of the techniques and strategies that we have. And so as we can free up that capital, through paying less in taxes, that's more money that business owner has to invest into their business, or to invest into long-term appreciation, or to buy, more real estate, or whatever the case may be. But really our core business is about, helping business owners be more efficient. It's about keeping more of what they make. It's about investing what they make smartly. It's about coaching and guiding them on how to be better business owners. We've got, in our virtual family office, we've got some of the best business coaches and kind of business advisory coaches, in the nation. And so it's really, about being proactive and holistic and helping those business owners and higher net worth individuals maximize kind of what they've been given. And, my hope is that as we free up capital through taxes, through better planning, through increased efficiency, that more of that capital goes back into the community in the form of charitable donations, in the form of, philanthropy, or whatever the case may be.
No, I mean, I think it's a great strategy that you guys have. And for anybody that's watching this, that's a real estate agent or real estate broker, definitely make sure to reach out to Jason, because there's some huge incentives and capabilities that he has to help your guys' clients if they're in similar situations where they do want a 1031, where you do need to make that introduction to a client that you have that has investment properties and maybe wants to continue growing that portfolio. So I would definitely recommend. So I want to dive a little bit more into like how you got to where you're at, and let's talk about some of the big successes that you've had, maybe not just financially, but like just overall. What would you say that some of those have been?
Yeah, I mean, I started my practice in 2019. I had a good paying job. It was nice, 6-figure job in a leadership role, on a really good positive track, and really, decided I don't want to work for myself. 90% of people who decide to become financial advisors don't make it 5 years. And so I'm almost through with my 5th year, and I'm still here. So that's a big success right there. Right. But I mean, quitting a good paying job, starting a business from scratch in an industry you've never been in. My wife stays home. We have 5 kids. She homeschools 3 of those kids. 2 of them are in private school. So it was a huge risk. Yeah. So, the fact that I'm still here 5 years later is a huge success. One of the other things that I'm super proud of is, in the last 5 years, I've had probably $2 to $3 million redirected toward charitable causes that I've helped clients redirect just through, being able to show them, that they can do it, that they can afford to do it, and that it's well within their means to do it. Because, I find a lot of people that have means, the lack of a plan creates anxiety and kind of creates a mentality of like, I've got to hold on to what I have because for fear that I don't have enough. And so a lot of times, we find it through the planning process, and we can unlock a person by giving them a plan. They get more clarity about what they can and can't do. And so oftentimes, through that planning process, they realize, hey, I can give away a lot more money than I thought I could. And so we love to help facilitate, the efficient transfer of assets for charitable causes and things like that. And so, being able to help clients give away, over $3 million in the last 5 years that they otherwise probably wouldn't have given away due to just, better planning has been a huge win for me. And to be able to pour that back in the community and help set up charitable legacies and things like that. And gosh, I mean, just in the last, couple of years, we've probably helped, put somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million, $1.5 million of tax dollars back in clients' pockets in the last year. Money that they would have paid to the federal government in, versus what they got to keep for themselves. So that's a pretty big win. I think the federal government's kind of not a very good steward of your dollars. I think you could probably direct those dollars better than they can. And so, yeah, so that's kind of, one of the things I'm a huge fan of is how people keep more of what they earn.
Well, I mean, I think that's absolutely phenomenal. I'm a huge proponent of philanthropic work to where no matter where you're at in your life, if you learn to be able to provide some of what you have to somebody that is in need at any stage in your life, you'll be able to do that whether you have $10 left to your name or you got $10 million in your savings account. So learning how to be able to provide that to others is a huge resource. And I do that with my own commissions for some of the or for all of the clients that I work with, donate back to some of the nonprofits in our area. Because like you said, it's all about leaving your legacy. And through the way that you just answered that pretty much answers my next question, which was going to be, what really separates you from some of the other people that, might wear that investment advisor hat as well. But I think just kind of your outlook alone and everything that you just said 100% answers that. But feel free to throw anything else in there that maybe you didn't cover.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's, like I said kind of before, there's a way that financial advisors are trained, and they're trained to be salespeople. And I think that's one of the big mysteries. I get approached, to be like the treasurer of this thing or that thing or whatever, and I have to kind of pause and say, hey guys, you do realize that like financial advisors are not accountants, right? like I would be the worst treasurer on the planet, right? that's not who I am, and in large part because that's how financial advisors are trained, man. They're trained to be salespeople. They're trained to be transactional in a lot of ways. And this is not a knock on the industry as a whole, but at the retail level, we're talking about advisors that are going after the mass market. In a lot of ways, that's kind of how it works. And I would say that for the mass market, the big retail shops out there, kind of your Edward Jones, your Merrill Lynch, your JP Morgan's, where most people are going to think about going to see a financial advisor. The vast majority of W-2 earners, they're going to get great service. They're going to get a good plan coming out of there, and they're going to get, kind of the basic blocking and tackling that 95% of the people out there need. But that other 5% of the people, those higher net worth individuals, those successful business owners, that basic blocking and tackling is just not good enough for them. And so, to try to use like the iceberg analogy, the little tip of the iceberg that's sticking out of the water, most of the techniques that most financial advisors, they know that, right? And that applies to 95% of the people out there. Most of your mid-market, mass affluent W-2 earners, that maybe have saved up $1 million, $1.5 million in their 401k. That tip of the iceberg covers 99% of their needs. But everything below the iceberg, like all that other kind of 90% that's below the iceberg, that's all the stuff that most advisors don't know, that most advisors never engage in, because they're not working with the kind of clients that we work with, because they don't have the resources that we have. And most of your successful business owners and higher net worth individuals, the techniques and strategies that are available to them live under the water. And so the thing that really sets us apart is like, yeah, we can do all the, we do retirement planning, and we can help those W-2 people, and we can do a really great job of that, like most any advisor can. But for that business owner that really is concerned about, taxes, legacy, wealth transfer, estate planning, we're getting into taxable estates. How can I be more efficient with my business? Most of your retail advisors don't have a clue how to approach a client like that. And that's kind of where we specialize. And so I would say that's something that really sets us apart is, all that stuff that's below the waterline on the iceberg, that's where we live.
That's always good to be able to split that up. I always love that analogy as well.
Yeah.
A moment ago, you talked about after, this is going to be your 5th year. And so you've made it this far. And so that's a pretty huge win. I know in the real estate side of the industry, we have an 87% failure rate year one. And if you make it past 5 years, you're basically a phenom, because it's just very rare, because so many people come into the industry thinking, man, I love looking at houses and I like talking to people, but they totally are just oblivious to all of the other hats that they have to wear in this industry. So I'm sure that you guys have your own struggles on the financial advisory side, but let's talk about some of the challenges that you've faced up to this point with getting to this 5-year mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think the very similar to the real estate industry, the financial advisory industry, people struggle with the same things, right? I can become a very technically competent advisor, right? I can learn the tax code, I can learn about investing, I can learn about planning and strategies, I can get my CFP, right? It's no different than kind of in your space, right? I can know everything there is to know about how to do a transaction, how to stage a house, how to photograph a house, how to market a house, how to do all that stuff. But none of that matters if I can't acquire clients, right? Yeah. And the biggest struggle, I think that, my daughter's a real estate agent. So I've seen her kind of go through this, right? Is the biggest struggle I see with new real estate agents and new financial advisors is having the personality and the wherewithal and the boldness to get out there and acquire clients. And client acquisition is the hardest part. Like anything else. My approach has always been, when we look at how I was coached when I came up in the industry, I feel like I was coached kind of very old school, make your calls, do your dials, get out there, network. But my goal is always, again, in the spirit of kind of being an engineer and trying to be more efficient, right, is how can I use leverage to get in front of more people? And so, finding ways to get in front of large crowds of people that have high values alignment with me has been a thing that's been very effective, for me. But yeah, I mean, client acquisition is the hardest part of this business. That's why 90% of advisors don't make it, because either they don't have the network, they don't know how to go generate the network, they don't know how to get up there and communicate and talk to people and show their value. And while they may be really, really smart and maybe really phenomenal advisors, if they can't acquire new clients, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, if nobody knows who you are, it doesn't matter how smart you are.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And that's I think that's the hardest part of any, being in business for yourself in any service-based business is acquiring new clients.
Yeah, one of the most valuable nuggets that I've ever received from another podcast was a CEO of a large commercial real estate firm. And he was talking about, after being in the industry for 40 years, he's like, if you would have told me day one when I came into this industry that I would still be cold calling and I would still be prospecting on a daily basis. And he said, I still do it every day. Every day. You just got to keep doing it. I mean, because the prospecting and business development is the lifeblood of any business. Now, you touched on a major point that I just want to talk about briefly, but I call it compressing timeframes. So you're doing the same activity as you would on an individual or one-to-one basis, but if you can learn how to leverage and scale that on a mass basis, you're doing the same thing, but you're doing it in front of or to a large volume of people. And so you're able to get an exponential result from the same activity that you're doing. So if in any industry that's sales related, I would say if you could figure out a way to be able to do that, you're going to be extremely successful. And one of the old cliche terms is you just have to be married to the process and divorced from the result. If there's
That's right. That's right.
Stats out there that says, hey, if I talk to 50 people, I'm guaranteed to eventually get a sale from that. Then I just need to know every day when I get into it, I need to go talk to my 50. And
that's right.
And I like looking at it from that perspective. It's logical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's, been a big part of what I've had to do is like you said, build a process, trust the process, and kind of stick to the process. And part of the challenge is developing a good, consistent process, right, that works. And you test some things and you try some things and but for me, a lot of it has also been to, there's nothing new under the sun, right? I could sit here and I could jack around and I could try to, poke in the dark and figure all this stuff out on my own. Or I could just go find somebody, who's like 10 years ahead of me, who's been really successful that I think, oh, they're where I want to be. And I just go ask them what they did and just go do that because whatever they did worked. So I'm sure I could probably do the same thing.
I actually just put out some content this morning that was on that exact topic. I call it the R&D model, rip off and duplicate. You don't need to
there you go.
Just find somebody else that's done it and ask them how they did it, just like you said.
Yeah. Every great idea I've ever had, I borrow from somebody else.
Yep, absolutely. So the next thing I want to kind of touch on is for anybody, like you had made a mention of how you left a six-figure career to come into this industry. And I did the same thing, leaving the power industry and getting my real estate license. And I'm in year 6 of having my real estate license. So I think we both passed, or we're at and past the 5-year mark. So I think that, hopefully we're going to continue to be here for the next 10 to 20 years. But what advice would you give anybody that's maybe thinking about taking that first step, or that's an aspiring business owner or just entrepreneur that like maybe is scared to take that approach or doesn't know? Like, walk me through any tips that you would give the younger you that's starting that same process.
Yeah, I mean, again, from an advice standpoint, we always try to lean on biblical wisdom where we can when we give, clients advice. And one thing it says in Luke is that, that Jesus talked about is that, who among you before building a tower doesn't first count the cost, right? Lest you kind of be halfway through and not be able to finish. And I think, that's really, if you want to break out and go on your own, I think, really that's one big part is like prepare yourself, right? Prepare yourself. It's not going to go as easily as you think it will, right? It won't go as fast as you think it will. And, get yourself together, right? Get your house in order, I think is a big thing, something that I had to make sure that I had before I jumped out of my own. Because I was a little over ambitious about how quickly I could get this thing up and running as well. But thankfully we had prepared ourselves well, and I think that's a big thing. A lot of folks try to step out there and just wing it, I think that's can be kind of foolish if you try to do that and not put yourself in a position to where, hey, can I go the next 6 months without income, right? And focus on building something. And the other thing is seek wise counsel. Like I just said a minute ago, I mean, there's plenty of people out there who have gone before you. Go ask them their advice. It's amazing how many people will freely kind of open their skirt to you if you just sit down with a humble attitude and go, man, I respect the hell out of where you're at and how far you've gotten. I would love to be in your place one day. Man, what would you share with a guy like me who wants to kind of duplicate what you've done? How many people are willing to just sit down and, I'll buy you lunch, and have those conversations with you? I mean, that's a huge thing. And I would say too, even, don't be, kind of in the spirit of generosity. I mean, live with an open hand. Don't be afraid to partner with people. Don't be afraid to be generous with other people. I tell people all the time, half a watermelon's a bit more than a whole grape, right? If I can partner with somebody who is doing it well, who can mentor me and teach me and guide me to accelerate my learning, and the cost of that is I have to split my income with them. Well, if I'm getting $1 million at bats with that person, when I got to split 50-50 versus $200,000 at bats by myself that I got to keep all of, which one's better? Yeah. I'd rather split the $1 million with you, Jake, than get the 200K on my own. You know what I mean?
I'm down with it.
So I think, those are the three key things I think that really, people that are breaking out on their own, should really internalize, man. Count the cost, prepare yourself before you make the jump, seek wise counsel, and don't be afraid to share in exchange for knowledge, accelerated knowledge, or partnering with people who can really help accelerate, your growth.
No, I think that's phenomenal. I've always noticed that lack of capital is usually one of the main reasons that most business owners go out of business within the first 1 to 5 years, is because they don't anticipate what it's going to cost to run their business. So I'm a huge advocate of the burn the boats mentality, to where you don't have any other options. You got to go full steam ahead, because that gives you the drive. But I'm also not a fan of suicide. You don't need to financially kill yourself, to where, like, if you can't afford it and you're going to be homeless, it's probably not a good decision to make. Now, to some people that might be good motivation. I don't necessarily err on that side. I usually like what you said. Hey, let's make sure we got 6 to 12 months of financial runway ahead of us. And then, now that all parties are on board, let's make that jump. So then that way, God forbid, you and I both know that, where for whatever reason, if it wasn't ever going to work out in the industries that we're in, we could go back to the power industry and do that. And,
sure.
And we'd be wearing the golden handcuffs, working, 70, 80 hours a week, making 6 figures a year. But we don't have that freedom. And that's not exactly where we want to be, obviously, which is why we're here.
Yeah.
But I think that's huge. You've been absolutely awesome today. Now, one of the things I always like closing with is that if from the services that you offer, is there anything that like discount wise or any kind of free offering that you might be able to do for anybody that sees this podcast or hears it and does reach out to you saying, "Hey, man, I heard about you on the Northeast Georgia podcast. I'd love to work with you or have some clients."
Yeah, if anybody, wants to reach out, one of the things that we can do is we can kind of do well, I'll call like a free financial analysis, right? We'll gather some data from you. We can do like a portfolio analysis, or we can kind of plug your data into our planning system and kind of give you a snapshot of, hey, what's the trajectory that you're on right now? If you do nothing, if you keep doing what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, for anybody that wants to, set an appointment with us, through this podcast, we'd be happy to do that for them, so they can kind of get a sense of where they're at, and we could probably even share a couple ideas with you. Here's some things we see that could improve your situation, and then if you want to work with us after that, we can talk about what the engagement looks like to work with us on the planning side. But yeah, I'd be happy to offer that up if anybody wants to give us a call and set an appointment.
Well, that's huge, man. I appreciate that. And everybody, if you guys heard that, make sure to take Jason up on it. He's going to be, opening up the skirts to be able to let you guys in and be able to check out the situation either for you or your clients. So it's a huge value add. But like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Jason. I'm going to let you get back to the rest of your day. But anybody that wants to reach out to Jason, make sure to look either below or somewhere around wherever you're listening or watching this podcast for all of Jason's contact information, his website, email. I'm assuming you're on social medias.
Yeah, we've got LinkedIn and Facebook. We've got pages, but yeah, website, email. I'll even shoot an appointment link below if you want to click and just book an appointment straight with us there. We'll be happy to do that.
All right, fantastic. Well, if you have any closing remarks, go ahead and to give out some of those golden nuggets, Jason. But other than that, we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, no, Jake, thanks for having me, man. I'm super grateful for the opportunity to share, and yeah, look forward to continuing, to work together and help your clients out, and just be a resource to you and everybody in the community.
All right, thanks everybody. Once again, this is the Northeast Georgia podcast, and stay tuned for the next episode.
As we wrap up another episode of the Northeast Georgia Real Estate Podcast, I want to extend a big thank you to our remarkable guest, Jason Bright. You had some phenomenal insight on 1031 exchanges and maximizing your capital whenever you're selling a property. So I truly appreciate your time and participation. Now, to all you property owners out there, whether you're considering buying, selling, or leasing commercial or residential real estate in the greater Atlanta, Northeast Georgia area, or even the western upstate portion of South Carolina, remember that we're here to support you. Our dedicated team is ready to guide you through every step of your real estate journey. Our team's a powerhouse, featuring specialized commercial agents who excel in leasing and sales across diverse categories, including office, retail space, industrial properties, and multifamily residences. On the residential side, our agents specialize in everything from traditional single-family homes to luxury estates, even navigating the intricate world of REOs and short sales. And here's something exciting for all you licensed agents across the Southeast, covering South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. If you're seeking a supportive community of real estate professionals who can act as your mentors, advisors, coaches, and friends, then look no further. At VPR First Team, we provide exclusive one-on-one access to some of the most successful commercial and residential realtors and brokers in the field. So if you're looking to learn, grow, and thrive in your real estate career, or if you're on the hunt for a new home, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to make your journey a smoother one. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Northeast Georgia Real Estate Podcast. If you've enjoyed the insights shared today, remember to subscribe, rate, leave a comment, or a review. And until next time, keep those dreams alive. We'll catch you on the next episode.